A human entered, just as the tribal aliens were about to destroy her Part 1, The Desperate Escape. The warning lights in Dr. Elena Vasquez's research pod flashed red as explosions lit up the space around her. Corporate raiders were destroying everything. At the dig site, she had to run, and she had to run now. "Computer, emergency jump!" Elena shouted as she grabbed her research files. Her hands shook as she entered random coordinates into the navigation system. She didn't care where she went, as long as it was far from here. The pod's engine screamed as it jumped into hyperspace. Elena held on tight as the ship shook violently. Something was wrong. The jump drive was damaged from the attack. Sparks flew from the control panel. "Warning! Hull breach detected. Life support failing," the computer announced in its calm voice. Elena's heart pounded. She was going to die out here in space, and no one would ever know what she had discovered. Her research about the ancient ruins would be lost forever. The pod suddenly dropped out of hyperspace near a green and blue planet. Elena had never seen this world before. It wasn't on any of her star maps. The damaged engines couldn't hold orbit. The pod was falling toward the planet's surface. Come on," Elena whispered as she tried to control the crash landing. The pod hit the ground hard, throwing her against the wall. Everything went black. When Elena woke up, her head hurt badly. Sunlight came through a crack in the pod's hull. She was alive, but barely. Her left arm was hurt, and she could taste blood in her mouth. She climbed out of the wrecked pod and looked around. She was in a valley surrounded by tall mountains. Strange purple grass grew everywhere, and the sky was a light orange color. 2 suns hung in the sky. But what made Elena gasp was what she saw in the distance. Ancient stone ruins covered the valley floor. Tall towers and broken walls stretched, as far as she could see. The architecture looked familiar, but that was impossible. No human had ever been to this world before. Elena grabbed her scanner and emergency kit from the pod. She had to investigate those ruins. As an archaeologist, she couldn't ignore such an important discovery. Even if she was stranded and hurt, she had to know what those buildings were. She walked slowly toward the nearest structure. Her scanner beeped as it detected the stone composition. The readings were strange. The materials were local to this planet, but the building methods were not alien at all. "This can't be right," Elena said to herself. She ran the scan again. The results were the same. These ruins were built using human construction techniques. As she got closer to the main tower, Elena heard sounds coming from behind her. She turned around and saw them. Creatures unlike anything she had ever seen before were walking toward her. They stood about 7 feet tall on 6 legs. Their bodies were covered in hard, crystal-like shells that reflected the orange sunlight. Their heads were triangular with 4 eyes that glowed yellow. They carried weapons made from bone and metal. Elena's universal translator device started working automatically. The creatures were talking to each other in clicking and buzzing sounds. "Sky Demon has come," one of them said. "The forbidden ground has been violated." "The ancestors are angry," another replied. "The prophecy spoke of this day." Elena raised her hands to show she wasn't dangerous. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she said. "My ship crashed. I need help." The creatures stopped talking and stared at her. Their glowing eyes got brighter. One of them, wearing a headdress made of colorful feathers and bones, stepped forward. "The Sky Demon speaks with the voice of the Cursed Ones," the leader said. "High Shaman Zixthara must see this." Before Elena could say anything else, the creatures surrounded her. They took her scanner and emergency kit. One of them touched her arm where she was hurt, and she felt a strange tingling sensation. The pain went away. "You heal me?" Elena asked in surprise. The creature pulled its hand back quickly, as if it had done something wrong. The leader made angry clicking sounds. "Do not show kindness to the Sky Demon healer Vixtal," the leader said. "It will make the ancestors more angry." They forced Elena to walk with them deeper into the ruins. As they moved through the ancient streets, Elena couldn't stop looking at the buildings around her. The more she saw, the more convinced she became that these were human-made structures. The mathematical proportions were perfect. The decorative patterns followed human artistic principles. Even the way the buildings were positioned followed human city planning methods that Elena had studied in school. But how was this possible? Humans had only been traveling in space for a few hundred years. These ruins looked thousands of years old, maybe tens of thousands. The group stopped in front of a massive temple. It was built into the side of a mountain with dozens of levels. Carved into the rock, strange symbols covered every surface. Elena's translator couldn't read them, but something about the symbols seemed familiar. Inside the temple, hundreds of the crystal-shelled creatures gathered in a large circular room. They all stared at Elena as she was brought to the center. The room was lit by glowing crystals that grew from the walls like plants. At the far end of the room, on a raised platform, sat the largest creature Elena had seen yet. This one wore robes made from shimmering fabric and had crystals growing from its shell. Its 4 eyes glowed brighter than all the others. "I am High Shaman Zixthara," the creature said in a deep, echoing voice. "You are the sky demon our ancestors warned us about." "I'm not a demon," Elena said. "I'm a scientist. My name is Elena Vasquez. I study ancient civilizations." The crowd of creatures made angry buzzing sounds when they heard this. Zixthara raised a clawed hand for silence. "You come from the sky in a metal shell," the shaman said. "You carry the cursed machines of the ancient ones. You walk on the forbidden ground where the first sky people once lived. You are exactly what the prophecy described." Elena's heart started beating faster. "First sky people? What do you mean?" Zixthara's eyes got even brighter. "Long ago, before our great-great-grandparents were born, sky people came to our world. They taught us numbers and showed us the stars. They built great cities in this valley." The shaman pointed at the ruins around them. "But they brought evil with them. A great enemy followed them across the stars. Fire fell from the sky. The first sky people died, and their cities became empty." Elena felt dizzy. The creatures were talking about humans. Ancient humans who had somehow reached this world long before modern space travel began. "Our ancestors swore an oath," Zixthara continued. "If sky people ever returned, they would be destroyed before the great enemy could find us again. The sacred ground must remain forbidden." The crowd of creatures started chanting in their clicking language. Elena's translator picked up words like sacrifice, cleanse, and protect the ancestors. "You will die when the first sun rises tomorrow," Zixthara announced. "Your blood will be given to the sacred crystals. The ancestors will know we remember. Their warning." Elena was taken to a small chamber deep in the temple. They tied her hands with ropes made from plant fibers and left her with only a bowl of water and some kind of fruit to eat. As she sat in the dark, Elena's mind raced. The creatures called themselves the Kethmori, according to her translator. They believed humans had been here before, thousands of years ago. But how was that possible? Elena remembered the corporate raiders who had attacked her dig site. They hadn't been trying to steal artifacts for money. They had been looking for something specific: star charts, navigation data, information about ancient human settlements. What if there had been an earlier wave of human space exploration? What if something terrible had happened to those first explorers? Something so bad that all records of it were lost or hidden? Elena looked at the stone walls around her. Even in the dark, she could see symbols carved into the rock. As her eyes got used to the dim light, she started to make out patterns in the symbols, mathematical sequences, star positions, coordinate systems. "Oh no," Elena whispered, as she realized what she was looking at. "These aren't just buildings. This is a navigation center." The walls around her were covered in star maps. Maps that showed the position of Earth and dozens of other worlds. Maps created by humans who had somehow traveled across the galaxy tens of thousands of years ago, and, if the Kethmori were right, something had followed those ancient humans across space, something that had destroyed their entire civilization. Elena shivered as she realized the truth. The corporate raiders weren't just stealing from archaeological sites. They were tracking down evidence of humanity's first attempt at galactic expansion. But why? Outside her cell, Elena could hear the Kethmori preparing for tomorrow's ceremony. They were sharpening their bone weapons and gathering ceremonial items. They really intended to kill her at sunrise. She had one night to figure out how to escape. One night to solve a mystery that had been hidden for thousands of years. One night to save not just her own life, but possibly all of humanity. As the sounds of preparation continued outside, Elena studied the star maps on her prison walls and tried to understand what had really happened to Earth's forgotten children so long ago. A human entered, just as the tribal aliens were about to destroy. Her part 2. The unlikely champion dawn was coming fast. Elena could see the first orange sun rising through the small window in her prison cell. The Kethmori had been preparing all night for her execution. She could hear them singing death songs and sharpening their bone weapons. High Shaman Zix Thara appeared at her cell door with 6 warrior guards. Their crystal shells gleamed in the morning light. Each warrior carried a curved bone blade that looked very sharp. "It is time, Sky Demon," Zix Thara said. "The ancestors wait for your blood." Elena's hands were still tied, but she tried to stay calm. "Please, let me show you something first. The symbols on these walls, I can read some of them. Your ancestors left a message." "Lies," Zix Thara hissed. "The cursed machines in your head make you speak false words. Come." The guards pulled Elena from her cell and dragged her through the temple corridors. Hundreds of Kethmori lined the walls, all watching her with their glowing yellow eyes. Some threw small stones at her, others made angry clicking sounds. They brought her outside to a large stone circle in front of the temple. The circle was covered with strange symbols and dark stains that Elena didn't want to think about. This was clearly where they performed their sacrifices. Elder Thakmor, the war leader Elena had seen the day before, stood at the edge of the circle. He was bigger than the other warriors, with scars across his crystal shell and weapons hanging from his belt. "The Sky Demon will die with honor," Thakmor announced to the crowd. "Then the forbidden ground will be clean again." More Kethmori gathered around the circle. There had to be over 1,000 of them now. Men, women, and children all came to watch the execution. Elena had never felt so alone. Zix Thara raised a ceremonial bone knife above Elena's head. The blade was painted with red symbols and looked very old. "Great ancestors, we offer this sky demon's life to protect our world," the shaman began chanting. "May her death keep the ancient enemy away from us." Elena closed her eyes and tried to think of her family back on Earth. At least they would never know how she died. Maybe that was better. The bone knife started coming down toward her chest. Then the world exploded. A small spacecraft crashed through the crowd of Kethmori like a metal meteor. Aliens scattered in all directions as the ship skidded across the stone ground, throwing up sparks and dust. The ship's door opened with a loud hiss. A man jumped out, rolling across the ground and coming up in a fighting crouch. He was human, wearing black combat armor and carrying no visible weapons. Elena couldn't believe it. Another human, here on this impossible world. The man looked around quickly, taking in the scene. His eyes found Elena tied up in the sacrifice circle, then moved to the hundreds of angry Kethmori warriors surrounding them. "Well," he said in a calm voice, "this looks complicated." "Who are you?" Elena shouted over the noise of angry aliens. "Marcus Chen," the man replied. "I'm here to rescue you, Dr. Vasquez, though I have to say, your timing could be better." 50 Kethmori warriors charged at Marcus from all directions. Elena was sure he would be torn apart in seconds. But Marcus didn't draw any weapons. Instead, he just stood there and watched them come. At the last second, Marcus moved. Elena had never seen anything like it. Marcus didn't fight the aliens. He used their own attacks against them. When one warrior swung a bone club at his head, Marcus ducked and grabbed the alien's arm, using the creature's momentum to throw it into two other attackers. When three warriors tried to surround him, Marcus rolled between their legs and kicked one of them into the others. They all fell down in a pile of crystal shells and angry clicking sounds. Marcus never tried to hurt them seriously. He just made them fall down or run into each other. It was like watching a dance, except the music was the sound of confused alien warriors. The crowd of Kethmori stopped attacking and started watching in amazement. They had never seen fighting like this before. Elder Thakmor stepped forward, his 4 eyes bright with interest. "Stop!" he commanded the other warriors. "This Skywalker fights with honor." The warriors backed away from Marcus, but kept their weapons ready. Marcus stood up slowly, showing his empty hands. "In our culture," Thakmor said to Marcus, "a warrior who shows mercy in battle is either very weak or very strong. You could have killed many of my people, but you chose not to." "Why?" Marcus looked around at all the Kethmori faces staring at him. "Because they're not my enemies. They're protecting their home just like I would." High Shaman Zixathara made angry buzzing sounds. "Another sky demon comes to trick us with false words. Kill them both!" But Thakmor raised his hand. "Wait. I want to understand this strange warrior. He fights like the old stories tell of the first sky people, with skill but without cruelty." Elena couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Marcus, how did you find me? How did you even know I was here?" Marcus walked over to her and cut the ropes around her hands with a small knife. "I was tracking the corporate raiders who attacked your dig site. Their ship logs showed they were following your research about ancient human settlements." "Corporate raiders?" Elena rubbed her wrists where the ropes had been. "They weren't just stealing artifacts, were they?" "No," Marcus said grimly. "They were looking for something much more important: star charts, navigation data, evidence of where humans went in the distant past." Zixthara made more angry sounds. "The sky demons speak to each other in their cursed language. They plan to bring the ancient enemy back to our world." "What ancient enemy?" Marcus asked Elena. Elena looked around at all the Kethmori listening to them. "They say humans were here before, thousands of years ago. But something followed those humans across space and destroyed them." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Elena could see him thinking hard about something. "Dr. Vasquez," he said finally, "what exactly were you researching at that dig site?" "Evidence of early human space travel," Elena replied. "I found ruins on 3 different worlds that looked like human architecture, but they were all too old. Impossibly old. And the corporate raiders attacked right after you made that discovery?" "Yes, they—" Elena stopped talking as she realized what Marcus was getting at. "You think they've been tracking my research? But why?" Thakmor stepped closer to them. "You speak of the ancient enemy as if you do not know what it is. But your own people brought it to our world long ago." "What did this enemy look like?" Marcus asked. Zixathara pointed to the temple walls, where Elena could see carved pictures. The images showed strange ships that looked more grown than built, with curved surfaces and no straight lines. "Ships that lived and breathed," the shaman said. "Creatures that ate the minds of thinking beings and turned their own tools against them." Elena felt cold despite the warm morning air. "Marcus, what if the corporate raiders aren't just stealing information? What if they're working for someone else?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Or something else." Elder Thakmor looked back and forth between the 2 humans. "You truly do not know about the enemy that destroyed your ancestors?" "We know nothing," Elena admitted. "Our history books don't go back that far." The crowd of Kethmori started murmuring to each other in their clicking language. Elena's translator picked up words like forgotten, lost children, and broken memory. Zixathara was quiet for a long time, studying Elena and Marcus with glowing eyes. "If you speak truth," the shaman said finally, "then you are not the sky demons we feared. You are something else, something we did not expect." "What are we?" Elena asked. "You are the children of the first sky people, but you do not remember your parents' fate," Thakmor said. "The question is, will you repeat their mistakes, or will you learn from their failure?" Marcus looked around at the ancient ruins surrounding them. "We need to understand what happened here. Dr. Vasquez, can you read those star maps you mentioned?" Elena nodded. "Some of them, but I'll need time to study them properly." Zixathara made a decision that surprised everyone. "You will have that time, but only if you can prove you are worthy of the ancestors' knowledge." "What kind of proof?" Marcus asked. The shaman smiled, showing sharp teeth. "You must face the trial of understanding. If you can solve the mystery of the first sky people's downfall, we will help you. If you fail, you will join them in death." Elena and Marcus looked at each other. They didn't have much choice. "We accept," Elena said, as the crowd of Kethmori began to disperse. Elder Thakmor approached them privately. "Be careful, strange warriors," he said quietly. "The ruins hold more secrets than just star maps, and some secrets are dangerous to know." Elena watched the elder walk away, then turned to Marcus. "How did you really find me? And don't tell me it was just ship logs." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I used to work for Earth Defense Intelligence. We've been tracking strange activity in this sector for months. Ships going missing, archaeological sites being raided. Someone is very interested in humanity's ancient history." "Someone or something?" Before Marcus could answer, a new sound filled the air. It was a low humming noise that seemed to come from everywhere at once. High up in the orange sky, Elena could see small, dark shapes moving between the clouds. Ships were coming, and somehow Elena didn't think they were human. A human entered. Just as the tribal aliens were about to destroy her Part 3, Ancient Revelations. The humming sound grew louder as the dark shapes in the sky came closer. Elena could see they weren't normal spacecraft. These ships had curved surfaces that moved like living things. Their hulls seemed to breathe and shift as they flew. "Those are the ships from the temple carvings," Elena whispered to Marcus. "The ones the Kethmori say belong to the ancient enemy." Marcus pulled out a pair of electronic binoculars from his armor and looked up at the approaching vessels. "They're not like any ships I've ever seen. The hull patterns keep changing. It's like they're alive." High Shaman Zixathara ran toward them, her crystal shell glowing brighter with fear. "The Devourers have returned. The sky demons have led them back to our world." "Devourers?" Elena asked. "Is that what you call the ancient enemy?" "They consume everything," Zixathara said, her voice shaking. "They eat the minds of thinking beings and turn their tools into weapons against them. Our ancestors barely survived their last visit." Elder Thakmor shouted orders to his warriors. "Everyone to the deep caves. Protect the children and the sacred." "Crystals!" But Marcus held up his hand. "Wait, those ships aren't attacking. Look, they're landing near that ridge, not here in the temple area." Elena watched as the strange vessels settled on a flat area about 2 miles away. They didn't look like they were preparing for battle. Instead, they seemed to be setting up some kind of camp. "Dr. Vasquez," Marcus said urgently, "we need to understand what happened here in the past, and we need to understand it now. Can you read those star maps quickly?" Elena nodded. "The symbols on the temple walls, I think I can decode them if I have help." "What kind of help?" Zixathara asked suspiciously. "Your people's knowledge of the old stories. Combined with my understanding of human mathematics, Elena explained. The first Sky people left messages, but they're written in a code that uses both human science and Kethmori culture. Thakmor made a quick decision. Show us what you need. They all went back into the temple, where Elena began studying the carved symbols on the walls more carefully. With her scanner working again, she could see patterns that weren't visible to the naked eye. Look at this, Elena said, pointing to a section of wall covered in mathematical equations. These numbers show star positions, but they're calculated, using a calendar system I don't recognize. Zixthera studied the symbols Elena was pointing at. Those marks follow the old counting methods our ancestors used before the first Sky people taught us new ways. So the humans who built this place learned your culture and incorporated it into their record-keeping, Elena said excitedly. They weren't just visitors. They lived here long enough to become part of your society. Marcus was examining another section of the wall. Elena, come look at this. These symbols are different. Elena moved to where Marcus was standing. The carvings here were deeper and more recent than the others. These were added later. Someone updated the original message. As Elena traced the symbols with her fingers, her scanner began translating them. The words appeared on her device's screen. To those who come after us. We tried to run, but they followed. The Devourers feed on technology that thinks for itself. They cannot consume what grows from living minds joined in purpose. The crystals hold the key. Trust the first children. The path home leads through unity. First children, Elena repeated. That must mean the Kethmori. Zixthera's eyes glowed brighter. The crystals they speak of. Those are our sacred growing stones. They live, but they also think. They cannot be corrupted because they choose their own thoughts. Elena felt pieces of the puzzle clicking together in her mind. The ancient humans discovered something here. Something that could fight the Devourers. But it wasn't enough to save them, Marcus pointed out grimly. Maybe it was, Elena said slowly. What if some of them did survive? What if they found a way to hide until it was safe? She moved to another wall and began scanning frantically. The symbols here were arranged in a spiral pattern that hurt to look at directly. This is a star map, Elena announced. But it's not showing where the first Sky people came from. It's showing where they sent their children. Children? Thakmor asked. Elena's scanner finished translating the spiral text. They evacuated their young people to a distant world, a place the Devourers had never seen, a planet they called Earth. The temple went completely silent. Even the humming from the ships outside seemed to fade away. Marcus stared at Elena. Are you saying that we, modern humans, we're descendants of the survivors? It makes sense, Elena said, her voice growing excited. That's why I found human-style ruins on multiple worlds. The first Sky people had a whole galactic civilization. When the Devourers attacked, they sent their children to safety on Earth and told them to forget about the stars until they were strong enough to return. Zixthera made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. But you did return, and you brought the ancient enemy with you? Not on purpose, Marcus said. We didn't even know they existed. Elena was still studying the wall carvings. Wait, there's more here. Instructions, a plan. The new symbols her scanner found were hidden behind layers of later additions. As she decoded them, Elena's face grew pale. The first Sky people didn't just run away, she said quietly. They were preparing a trap. This whole planet is a weapon. What kind of weapon? Marcus asked. Elena pointed to a diagram showing the temple and the surrounding ruins. The entire complex is built around a network of living crystals. They're connected underground, spreading across the whole continent. Our sacred crystals, Zixthera whispered. They grow larger every year, but we never understood why. They're not just growing, Elena explained. They're building something, a defense system that uses biological technology instead of artificial intelligence, something the Devourers can't corrupt or control. Thakmor looked skeptical. If such, a weapon exists. Why didn't our ancestors use it against the Devourers long ago? Elena found more symbols hidden in the carved decorations around the walls. As her scanner translated them, she got her answer. Because it takes thousands of years to grow large enough to work, she read aloud. And it requires both human scientific knowledge and Kethmori cultural wisdom to activate. Both species working together, Marcus said, understanding. The first Sky people knew their descendants would return someday. They built this weapon for us to use together. Suddenly, the temple walls began to vibrate. A new sound echoed from outside. The whine of energy weapons charging up. The Devourers are moving, Marcus said, looking toward the entrance. But it wasn't the alien ships that were approaching. Through the temple doorway, Elena could see human corporate soldiers in combat armor marching toward them. Behind the soldiers walked figures in dark robes. "Dr. Vasquez," an amplified voice called out. "Come out peacefully and no one will be harmed." Marcus cursed under his breath. "The corporate raiders, they must have followed my ship's trail." "How did they find us so quickly?" Elena asked. "Because they're working with the Devourers," Marcus said grimly. "The enemy doesn't just consume technology, they corrupt the people who use it." Zixathara made clicking sounds of distress. "The ancient enemy has turned your own people against you, just as they did with the first Sky people." Elena looked around, at the Kethmori warriors gathering in the temple. There were maybe 50 of them, armed with bone weapons and crystal tools. Outside, she could count at least 100 corporate soldiers with advanced military equipment. "We can't fight them directly," she said. "We don't have to," Marcus replied. "We just need to buy time to activate the weapon." Elena studied the star map again. According to this, the activation sequence requires precise timing with the planet's magnetic field cycles. The next window opens in... She checked her scanner's chronometer. 6 hours. "Can we hold out that long?" Thakmor asked. Marcus looked at the ancient weapons the Kethmori carried, then at the advanced armor and energy rifles of the approaching soldiers. "Not in a direct fight," he admitted. "But maybe we don't need to fight them at all." "What do you mean?" Elena asked. Marcus smiled grimly. "The first Sky people left us more than just a weapon. They left us a lesson about how to beat an enemy that corrupts technology." He picked up one of the Kethmori bone spears and tested its weight. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Outside, the corporate soldiers were getting closer. Elena could hear their leader shouting orders about securing the archaeological assets and preparing for extraction procedures. But she could also hear something else, a low, musical humming that seemed to come from deep underground. The sacred crystals were waking up. The final battle for humanity's past and future was about to begin. A human entered. Just as the tribal aliens were about to destroy her Part 4. The enemy arrives. The corporate soldiers surrounded the temple while Elena and Marcus watched from inside. Through the doorway, Elena could see their leader removing his helmet. She gasped when she recognized his face. "Director Harrison," she whispered. "He was my research supervisor back on Earth." "You know him?" Marcus asked, gripping a Kethmori bone spear. "He approved my expedition funding. He knew exactly what I was looking for." Elena felt sick as she realized the truth. "He's been using me to find ancient human sites." Director Harrison's voice echoed through the temple. "Dr. Vasquez, your research has been invaluable. Come out and we can discuss your findings properly." "He sounds different," Elena said. Something about Harrison's voice was wrong. It was too calm, too emotionless. Zixathara moved closer to them. "The Devourers do not just corrupt machines. They corrupt minds, too. Your leader friend is no longer himself." Through the temple entrance, Elena could see figures in dark robes walking between the corporate soldiers. They moved strangely, like they were floating instead of walking. Their faces were hidden, but Elena could see pale hands that looked too long and thin to be human. "Those aren't people," Marcus said quietly. Elder Thakmor joined them at the doorway. "Those are devourer infiltrators. They wear the shapes of other species, but they are ancient hunger-wearing stolen flesh." The humming sound from underground grew stronger. Elena looked down and saw that the crystal formations in the temple floor were glowing brighter. "The weapon system is responding," she said, "but we still need 4 more hours before it's ready." "Dr. Vasquez," Harrison called again, "we know you've discovered something important in there. Our alien friends are very interested in your findings." One of the robed figures glided forward and whispered something to Harrison. When it spoke, Elena heard a sound like static electricity mixed with whispers. "The Devourer is giving him orders," Zix Thera said with disgust. Marcus studied the enemy. Positions outside. 100 soldiers with energy weapons plus at least 10 Devourer infiltrators. We can't fight them head-on. But we don't have to, Elena realized. Look at their equipment. She pointed to the soldiers' weapons and armor. Every piece of technology the corporate forces carried had electronic systems, targeting computers, communication devices, power regulators. All of their gear can be corrupted by the Devourers, Elena continued, but our weapons can't be. She picked up a crystal-tipped spear that one of the Kethmori warriors had given her. The crystal was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with its own inner light. "These are living tools," Thakmor explained. "They grow from our sacred crystals. They think their own thoughts and make their own choices. No outside force can control them." Marcus tested the balance of his bone spear. "So we have weapons they can't corrupt, but they still outnumber us 10 to 1. "Then we don't fight fair," Elena said with a smile. "We fight smart." She turned to Zix Thara. "How well do you know the tunnel systems under the temple?" "Every Kethmori child learns the ancient pathways," the shaman replied. "They connect all the ruins across the valley." Elena's mind was racing with possibilities. "Can we reach the other temple complexes without going outside?" "Yes, but why would we want to?" "Because this isn't just one weapon," Elena said, studying. The star maps on the walls again. "The whole valley is connected. Every ruin has its own crystal network. If we can activate multiple nodes at the same time," Marcus understood immediately. "We can surround them instead of being surrounded." Thakmor smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "A hunter's strategy. Use the enemy's confidence against them." Elena divided the Kethmori warriors into small groups. Each group would take the tunnels to a different ruin and wait for her signal. When the crystal network was ready, they would activate weapon nodes all across the valley at once. "But how will we know when it's time?" asked healer Vixtal, the Kethmori who had helped Elena's injury earlier. Elena looked at her scanner. The device was picking up energy readings from deep underground. The crystal network was building power, but slowly. "The crystals will tell us," she said. "When they're ready, we'll all feel it." As the Kethmori warriors began moving through hidden passages to their positions, Elena and Marcus prepared to face the corporate soldiers directly. "You sure about this plan?" Marcus asked as they moved toward the temple entrance. "No," Elena admitted. "But it's better than hiding until they break down the door." They stepped outside into the orange sunlight. Director Harrison smiled when he saw them, but his eyes were completely empty. "Elena, my dear colleague," Harrison said in his strange, emotionless voice, "you've made a remarkable discovery here. Our friends would like to learn more about it." One of the robed figures glided closer. Up close, Elena could see that its face was a shifting mass of darkness with tiny points of light where eyes should be. "The descendant children have returned to the first nest," the creature said in a voice like breaking glass. "They bring the forgotten paths back to us." "We're not bringing you anything," Elena said firmly. The devourer made a sound like laughter. You misunderstand, flesh memory. You have already brought us everything. Your mind carries the location marks of many ancient nests. Soon we will consume them all. Elena felt cold fear creep up her spine. The creature was talking about her research. All the archaeological sites she had discovered, all the evidence of ancient human civilization. The devourers could extract that information from her mind. But first, the devourer continued, you will deactivate the weapon growth your ancestors planted here. We will not make the same mistake twice. Marcus stepped protectively in front of Elena. She's not helping you with anything. You have no choice, Harrison said, raising his energy rifle. Around them, the corporate soldiers did the same. Surrender. Now and your death will be quick. That's when Elena felt it. A warm, tingling sensation that started in her feet and spread through her whole body. The crystal network was calling to her. Now, she whispered. Marcus dove to the left as Elena rolled to the right. The corporate soldiers opened fire, but something strange happened to their weapons. Instead of energy beams, the rifles shot out streams of sparking electricity that curved back toward their own users. The soldiers screamed as their own weapons shocked them. The crystals are interfering with their electronics, Elena realized. All across the valley, bright light began erupting from the ancient ruins as the Kethmori warriors activated weapon nodes. The light wasn't harmful to living beings, but it made all the corporate technology go crazy. Communication devices exploded. Armor power systems overloaded. Transport vehicles crashed as their navigation computers failed. The devourer infiltrators made horrible shrieking sounds as the light touched them. Their stolen human forms began melting away, revealing creatures that looked like living shadows with too many teeth. "Impossible!" one of them screamed. "The weapon growth should not be mature for another cycle." Elena laughed as she realized what had happened. "You counted wrong. You thought it would take longer because you were measuring time using Earth years. But this planet has a longer orbit. The crystal network had been growing for the correct amount of time according to local planetary cycles, not Earth time. The first Sky people had planned for their descendants to return when the weapon was ready, not before. Marcus fought his way through the confused corporate soldiers using his bone spear. Without their technological advantages, they were just regular people in non-functional armor, but the devourers themselves were far from defeated. As their human disguises fell away, they revealed their true forms, creatures of living darkness that moved like liquid shadow. "We do not need your corrupted tools to destroy you," the largest devourer hissed. "We are hunger itself. We consume directly." The shadow creature lunged at Elena with claws made of solidified darkness. She tried to dodge, but it was too fast. Then, Zixthara appeared between them, holding a crystal staff that blazed with pure white light. When the devourer's claws touched the crystal, the creature screamed and pulled back as if it had been burned. "The sacred crystals reject you," Zixthara declared. "They choose their own thoughts, and they choose to resist." More Kethmori warriors emerged from the ruins, all carrying crystal weapons that hurt the devourers to even look at. The shadow creatures found themselves surrounded by lights they couldn't corrupt or consume. But Elena knew this was only the beginning. Through the glowing network, she could sense something much larger approaching from space. The devourer ships in orbit were calling for reinforcements. The real battle was about to begin. A human entered, just as the tribal aliens were about to destroy her Part 5, the New Alliance. The sky above them turned dark as massive devourer ships blotted out the orange suns. Elena had never seen vessels so large. Each one was the size of a city, with hull surfaces that moved like living skin. "How many ships are there?" Marcus asked, helping a wounded corporate soldier who was no longer under devourer control. Elena counted the shadows above them. "At least 20, maybe more coming." The Corporate soldiers who had survived the crystal weapon activation were confused and frightened. With the Devourer mental control broken, they remembered nothing about why they had attacked the temple. "Sir," one of them said to Marcus, mistaking him for their commanding officer, "what are our orders? We don't understand what's happening." Marcus looked at Elena, then at the approaching alien fleet. "Your orders are to survive, and to help us protect this world." Director Harrison stumbled toward them, holding his head in pain. "Elena? Where are we? I remember approving your research grant then. Nothing until now." "You were being controlled," Elena explained quickly. "We don't have time for details. Can you contact Earth? Warn them about the Devourer fleet?" Harrison checked his communication device, but it was still sparking from the crystal interference. "All our equipment is dead." The shadow creatures on the ground were retreating toward their landed ships, but Elena could see more Devourer vessels descending from the main fleet. These were smaller ships, but there were hundreds of them. "They're sending invasion forces," Thakmor observed. "They mean to take this world by force." Zixathara raised her crystal staff toward the sky. The sacred stones throughout the valley began glowing even brighter, creating pillars of light that reached up into the atmosphere. "The weapon growth is not finished," she announced. "It needs more power to reach the sky ships." Elena studied her scanner readings. The crystal network was drawing energy from deep underground, but it wasn't enough to affect the massive fleet above them. "What does it need?" she asked. "Living minds joined in purpose," Zixathara replied, repeating the ancient message. "The more thinking beings who connect with the crystals, the stronger the weapon becomes." Elena looked around at the Kethmori warriors, the corporate soldiers, Marcus, and herself. "How many people do we have?" Thakmor did a quick count. 57 Kethmori, 23 humans. "That's not enough," Elena realized. "We need more." Marcus pointed toward the valley edges where the Devourer landing ships were touching down. "What about them?" "The Devourers themselves, they're thinking beings, too." "You want to include our enemies in the weapon?" Zixathara asked in surprise. "Not willingly," Elena said, her mind racing. "But what if we could force them to connect? Use their own mental energy against them?" She remembered something from the ancient writings. The crystal network doesn't just amplify friendly thoughts. It amplifies all thoughts. If we could trap some Devourers in the crystal matrix, we could turn their own power against the fleet, Marcus finished. Healer Vixtal stepped forward. "I know how to force a mind link with the crystals. It is dangerous. The unwilling mind often breaks, but it can be done." Elena felt guilty about what she was suggesting, but she could see Devourer troops pouring out of the landing ships. They had hundreds of shadow soldiers and more arriving every minute. "Do it," she decided. Thakmor organized the remaining Kethmori warriors into hunting parties. They used the tunnel networks to ambush small groups of Devourer soldiers, capturing them alive instead of destroying them. Meanwhile, Elena and Marcus worked with the human soldiers to understand their situation. Most of them were regular military, personnel who had been recruited for what they thought was a routine archaeological security mission. "We can fight," Sergeant Lopez told them, "but our weapons are useless without power cells." "Then we use Kethmori weapons," Elena said. "The crystals grow tools for anyone who asks respectfully." She led the human soldiers to the sacred crystal formations and showed them how to request living weapons. The crystals responded to their genuine need, growing spears and blades that felt warm and alive in their hands. "This is weird," one soldier muttered, but he gripped his new crystal spear with determination. Within an hour, they had captured 12 Devourer infiltrators and forced them into crystal containment cells that Vixtal had grown from the temple walls. The creatures fought against the mental link, but the crystals were stronger. "It's working," Elena announced as her scanner showed power levels rising throughout the network. "The Devourer's mental energy is being redirected into the weapon." System. Above them, the first effects became visible. Beams of pure crystal light shot up from the ruins throughout the valley, striking the nearest devourer ships. Where the light touched the living hulls, the ships began to change. The crystal energy is converting their biotechnology, Elena realized. It's making their own ships turn against them. The affected devourer vessels started attacking each other as their corrupted systems interpreted nearby ships as threats. The massive fleet formation broke apart as infected ships spread chaos through their ranks. But the largest devourer mothership remained unaffected, too far above the crystal weapon's reach. "We need more power," Zixthara said urgently. "The primary target is beyond our grasp." Elena looked at the scanner readings again. They needed to triple the energy output to reach the mothership. "What if we connected everyone?" she asked. "Not just the captured devourers, but all of us, every human and—" Keth Mori willingly joining the network. Marcus understood the risk immediately. "That could kill us. Our minds weren't designed for that kind of connection." "The first Sky people did it," Elena pointed out. "The ancient writings say they joined with the crystals to activate the original weapon. And they all died afterward," Thakmor reminded. Her grimly, Elena watched more devourer ships descending toward the planet. Soon there would be too many enemy forces to fight with primitive weapons. "Maybe they didn't die," she said slowly. "Maybe they just changed." She had noticed something strange about the crystal formations. They weren't just growing larger, they were growing more complex. Almost like they were developing nervous systems. "What if the first Sky people didn't die in the crystal link?" Elena continued. "What if they became part of it? Their consciousness preserved in living stone?" Zixthara's eyes widened with understanding. "The crystals have always felt aware, like they were watching us, guiding us." "The ancestors never left," Thakmor whispered. "They've been here all along, waiting for us to join them." Elena made her decision. "I'm going to connect with the network. Fully. If I'm right about the first Sky people still being in there, they can show me how to reach the mothership." "Elena, no," Marcus said. "We'll find another way." "There is no other way," she replied, "and I won't be alone. The Kethemori can guide the connection. Make sure I don't get lost." Before anyone could stop her, Elena placed her hands on the largest crystal formation in the temple. The moment her skin touched the living stone, her consciousness exploded outward. Suddenly, Elena could feel everything. Every crystal in the valley, every connected mind, every thought and emotion flowing through the network. But more than that, she could feel the presence of thousands of other minds, ancient, wise, and familiar. The first Sky people were still there, just as she had hoped. Their consciousness had merged with the crystal matrix, becoming living memory that guided and protected their descendants. "Welcome home, child," they said to her in voices like wind chimes and starlight. "We have been waiting so long for you to return." Through the network, Elena could see the entire devourer fleet as if from above. She understood now how to reach the mothership, not with brute force, but with precision. Working with the ancient minds and the willing help of every human and Keth Mori in the valley, Elena focused the crystal weapon into a single, perfect beam of living light. The beam struck the devourer mothership and did something the enemy had never experienced before. Instead of being destroyed, the ship was transformed. The living hull stopped responding to devourer commands and began making its own choices. Within minutes, the converted mothership turned its weapons on the remaining devourer fleet. The enemy vessels, unable to defend against their own technology turned against them, fled into hyperspace. As the immediate threat ended, Elena felt herself being gently pulled back from the crystal network. She opened her eyes to find Marcus and Zixthara supporting her. "Did it work?" she asked weakly. Through the temple doorway, she could see the converted mothership descending peacefully toward the valley. Its biomechanical hull had changed color from dark purple to crystal white. "It worked," Marcus said with relief. "And you're still you." Elena smiled. "Not just me. We're all connected now. Humans, Kethmori, and the living crystals. The first Sky people showed us how to build something the Devourers can never corrupt." Director Harrison approached them, no longer looking confused. "Elena, I don't fully understand what happened here, but I remember enough to know we need to warn Earth about the Devourer threat." "We'll do more than warn them," Elena said, looking at the crystal formations around them. "We'll teach them. The crystals can grow anywhere there are living minds to guide them." Thakmor smiled his sharp-toothed smile. "A new alliance, Sky people and